So there are a lot of different myths that persist, right, in our society when it comes to intimate partner violence. And I'm going to go through a couple here, but I would love to hear, you can, I knocked into the table. If there's any sort of myths that I don't mention, pop them into the Q&A and I'll take a moment to share those with everybody. But there are a lot of different myths and misconceptions about intimate partner violence. So first and foremost, that intimate partner violence is rare. Intimate partner violence impacts everyone. As I shared earlier, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. Intimate partner violence is not a serious problem in the United States. Actually, intimate partner violence is the single largest cause of injury to women in the United States. And there's several reasons why these myths and the myths that I'm going to talk about in the next couple of slides keep kind of existing in our society. First off, there's a lack of awareness. So oftentimes people don't have accurate information. They don't know maybe the various forms of intimate partner violence. They don't understand the prevalence of intimate partner violence. They're not aware of the various dynamics of intimate partner violence. And this can certainly lead to, this continuation of belief in myths. Also, there are societal norms, and that these societal norms actually can, reinforce these myths and misconceptions about intimate partner violence. There's also, it can be, I should say not also, but it can be really difficult and challenging for people to accept that, abuse can happen in relationships, and abuse can happen in relationships with people that I know. And so this denial and this cognitive dissonance can really lead people to believing in myths as a way to actually, avoid facing the reality that it's not rare and that anybody can be a victim of intimate partner violence. In addition to that, our clients that we're working with, for so many of my clients I know, have often had this experience where the perpetrators will blame shift, right? So the perpetrators will manipulate and they control the victim of intimate partner violence, and they blame shift. They make the victim in this situation feel like they're the ones that are responsible for the abuse that they're experiencing. And it can make it very challenging for the person experiencing abuse in that situation to recognize that, that they are actually being victimized. Also, we have just in general how intimate partner violence is portrayed just in the media, right? So there are various myths and misconceptions that are perpetuated by movies and by TV shows. Oftentimes when we hear about intimate partner violence and it's reported on in the media, it is where there is a male who is the perpetrator and a female who is the identified victim. And so when we constantly portray that over and over and over, it does not highlight the fact that anybody can be a victim of intimate partner violence. It does not highlight that people can be in members of the LGBTQ community and that they can be in intimate partner violence relationships, or that a male could be a victim of intimate partner violence. So we're really challenging these myths, or when we are challenging these myths, I should say, we're really challenging them in a variety of different ways. Couples counseling is the solution for intimate partner violence. That is such a myth, such an incredible myth, and still one that I've actually, heard even just up to a couple months ago in our field, in a conversation with some professionals talking about this specific case and, this idea of this couple going to couples counseling. Couples counseling is not recommended for couples that are trying to end violence in their relationships due to the power and control that underlie the violence. In addition to that, as you can imagine, it would be extremely challenging for somebody who's experiencing intimate partner violence to come into a couples session, right? And the perpetrator's right there, and to accurately and honestly report what they're experiencing when the perpetrator's right there. Because oftentimes what does happen, and exactly what they're afraid of happening, is that the perpetrator will use that information against them when they get home, right? And so they actually experience an escalation in the various tactics of abuse. Pregnant women are not victims of domestic violence. The fact is that domestic violence does not just stop because somebody becomes pregnant. A national survey actually indicates that about 5.3% of pregnant women each year experience intimate partner violence. So that's as many as 324,000 women each year are experiencing intimate partner violence during their pregnancy. Another myth, oh my goodness, I have to tell you, they all drive me crazy. All the myths drive me totally crazy, but this one really floors me. I've had so many clients who they'll come in and they'll talk about how they went to go and get support from a friend, from a family member, from whomever, about the fact that they are being abused by their partner. And somebody will respond with something along the lines of, oh my gosh, that can't be true. So-and-so, I've never seen so-and-so even get angry. I've worked with so-and-so every day for the last 20 years, and they don't even ever raise their voice. And so there's this myth that's out there that people have that perpetrators of intimate partner violence, that they're easily recognizable, right? Or that they're going to be able to be recognized because we're going to see this anger or this abusive behavior in all relationships. Nothing could be further from the truth. So most perpetrators do not actually use violence in other non-intimate relationships to resolve conflict. So the space and the place where they're using violence is within those intimate partner relationships. And so this idea that people would be like, oh no, I would just know that about so-and-so because I would see that in the way that they interact with others, is nothing could be further from the truth. But how incredibly frustrating too, right? For our clients that are trying to seek support and they go and they share, right? This really big secret, honestly. So many of my clients keep it a secret for so long. They share that and then that's kind of the response that they get. How incredibly invalidating and minimizing. Another myth, when perpetrators of abuse are violent, it is because they lost their temper, not because they meant to hurt their partner. Perpetrators use violence because it helps them gain and maintain power and control, not because they lose control of their emotions. So I don't think that I have it on the next slide, but I want to make sure to highlight it here. This is not like on your CE test or anything. This is just for you to know that abuse is a choice, right? This is not an anger and management problem. It is a choice that perpetrators make to be abusive to their partners. Drinking and or drug abuse causes battering. So, I do have it here. Intimate partner violence is a choice. Although alcohol abuse may increase the likelihood of violent behavior, it does not cause or excuse it. And victims of abuse are crazy if they choose to stay in an abusive relationship. It is so incredibly important that we remember that as an outsider to the abusive relationship, we are not living with the daily threat. We're not living with the fear of abuse or even death, right? We're not living with that fear of what's going to happen if I leave, to my pet, to my kids, to my job, to my, how am I going to financially afford to leave? So it's not our place to make judgments or assumptions or even draw any sort of conclusions regarding if a person stays in a relationship or if a person leaves that relationship. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go on throughout the course of the presentation. It's, as I'm sure you know, right? I have therapist friends, but I have a lot of friends who are non-therapists. And so it's so interesting because I'll talk to my non-therapist friends and it's no fault of their own because they're not necessarily trained in intimate partner violence. And they'll say things like, well, if that ever happened to me, I would just leave. If so-and-so ever hit me, I would just walk away. I just can't understand why they just won't walk away. And, and it's really challenging for people to understand how incredibly complex it is to leave. I have worked with so many clients over the course of my career who will come in and they'll even have said, I've always told myself that's what I would do. But after the first time it happened, I didn't leave. And it got more and more and more challenging and difficult to leave as time went on. So when we as individuals, as society, as providers, as first responders, when we believe in the myths that surround domestic and intimate partner violence, myths continue to exist. Victims ultimately underreport, and victim blaming continues. When we continue to believe in these myths, right, we reinforce these gender stereotypes around who can be survivors of intimate partner violence. We reinforce kind of this normalization of violence in relationships as well, right? Because we're not even acknowledging it, really paying attention to it. We're minimizing the experience of the survivor, while really not putting enough focus on the perpetrator. I don't have it in this presentation, but there's this question that I really like. It says, let me just make sure I get it right. It's like I could picture it in my head. Instead of asking why don't they leave, we should be asking why do they choose to abuse. And that, I think, right there speaks volumes to the work that we are doing. But that's really the question. Well, why doesn't this person leave? So we're putting all that focus here, but really, why is the perpetrator abusing? What is going on here? Like, where is their responsibility in this?